Would You Intervene? A project by Socialize This. Essentially, our group wanted to observe how Oxy students would react to direct violations of social rules. We were interested in this topic because it is a way to challenge Oxy's morals and ethics. This is important and applicable to all students in that many students leave their belongings unattended and trust the student body, and this can further be expanded to observe humanity's trust in their peers. Kitty Genovese's story is popularly referred to as an example of diffusion of responsibility. The incident occurred when a man attacked Kitty in front of her apartment in New York City in 1964. Kitty screamed repeatedly for help as her killer had stalked her for more than half an hour and stabbed her in 3 separate attacks on the street in front of her apartment. 38 neighbors heard her scream, yet nobody came to Kitty's rescue. No one even called the police. The big question that resulted was, how do you explain the fact that no one helped her? We will come back to this question later as it relates to the experiments we enacted. For this project, our objectives were to observe if being by yourself versus being in a group influences your ability to help another person, to understand how diffusion of responsibility plays into everyday life, and to record if people's responses were different as a result of the apparent social class of the criminal as seen by their clothing. Some of the theories and themes that came up during our experiment were bystander effect, diffusion of responsibility, profiling, social rules, and group dynamics. The bystander effect has been cited as an explanation for why no one helped Kitty. According to Darley and Latane, the 2 sociologists who studied the Kitty case, nobody helped because they knew other people were watching. Specifically, the bystander effect is the idea that individuals are more likely to help when alone than when in the company of others. Diffusion of responsibility states that when faced with helping someone out, a subject is more likely to help if they are alone than if they are with other people. For example, what happens when a schoolmate mistakenly drops his or her books in front of an individual versus a large group of students? In this case, the subject is more likely to help retrieve the books if they are alone as opposed to with a group, because the blame would not fall on a single person if they are in a group. Profiling is the analysis of a person's specific characteristics so as to assess or predict their capabilities in a certain sphere, or to assist in identifying a particular group of people. Specifically, we looked at profiling based on classism, which is prejudice and/or discrimination on the basis of social class. It includes individuals' attitudes, behaviors, and appearance that contribute to valuing people based on their judged socioeconomic class. Social rules, or social mores, are norms we all adhere to as a society. Our society has applied a series of punishments or consequences for breaking these rules. Social rules govern our daily life and are the foundations of the laws we follow. The group effect is the influential actions, processes, and changes that occur within groups and between groups.
Essentially, we set up an experiment in which one person asks a peer or group of peers to watch their belongings, including the laptop and iPod, while they leave for a moment. Another person then walks up a few minutes later and pretends to steal the belongings. We then record the responses of those who had been assigned to watch the belongings. In doing the experiment, we purposefully attempted to have the thief and the belongings in view of the subjects, and for the thief to make some attempt to be clumsy and noisy to gain the subject's attention. The experiment concluded when either the thief was compelled to return the objects, or once the subjects began to seek help or pursue the thief. At this point, we informed the subjects of the experiment we were doing. The experiments took place during daytime throughout Occidental's campus. We did the experiments in the marketplace, the green bean, the cooler, and the library. We had to use various locations to prevent surrounding people from observing the experiment and then potentially being the subjects in following experiments. Our independent variables were asking a group versus an individual, with the group being defined as more than one person, and the thief attired being either defined as well-dressed versus casual. Well-dressed was khakis and a polo, and casual dress was sweats, a white beater, and a baseball cap. This table describes our results, which are split into 4 categories. The categories are no reaction, in which the subject did nothing; limited reaction, in which the subject was distressed or concerned but did not intervene in any way; verbal reaction, in which the subject told the thief to stop or return the objects; and lastly, physical reaction, in which the subject pursued the thief. These pie charts again depict and summarize the results of our experiment by showing the reactions of the subjects to the thief stealing the objects. Graphs 1 and 2 show that there were stronger reactions when subjects were in a group. This difference, though, is not significant, and so there's no strong correlation between the individuals and groups as subjects. Graphs 3 and 4 show that there was more likely to be the strongest reactions when the thief was dressed casually. This is seen by the fact that there were 2 physical reactions to the casual thief out of 4 experiments, and no physical reactions to the well-dressed thief out of 4 experiments as well.
Now we would like to explain the relationship between the previously defined social theories in our experiment. The first is bystander effect. In our experiment, the person in distress was the person whose belongings were being stolen, the owner. The bystander effect took place in our experiment, but was not consistently the effect because 3/4 of the group intervened. Next, we have diffusion of responsibility. When the owner asked a specific individual to watch his laptop and iPod, there was no diffusion of responsibility because for that brief moment, the subject was singly responsible for the belongings. On the other hand, when the owner approached a group of individuals, addressing them as a whole, the theory states that they are less likely to react to the stealing because no one individual is temporarily responsible for all the belongings, or could be pinpointed for blame. Next is profiling, which took place in our experiment, in that when the thief was dressed as what society labels a thug or ghetto, subjects were more likely to react strongly and intervene. And last is group dynamics. There are 4 types of groups. We used a social group, which was a small group of moderate duration and permeability, characterized by moderate levels of interaction amongst the members over an extended period of time. For example, as co-workers, classmates, fraternities, and sports teams. In our experiment, often one leader emerged to try and deter the broken norm theft, which was in progress. If one person spoke up, then others usually joined in as they were influenced. On one occasion, no leader emerged, and therefore none were influenced, or all were influenced to be quiet. Usually the most vocal, dominant person is the one who speaks up. Some of the reasons subjects gave for intervening were:
I felt like it was my responsibility to say something because stealing is just not cool.
I live in a dorm where there's been a lot of theft recently, so I thought I had to question it.
Since I was in a group, I thought it was easier to speak up.
I was confused and concerned and ready to call campus security.
I spoke up because I was in a crowded public space, so the chances of getting hurt would have been slim.
And I wouldn't want my laptop and iPod to be stolen.
Essentially, the number of experiments we did was not large enough to definitely explain how most people in groups would react, but based on our experiment, subjects reacted more when in a group. Some reasons for this are people feel safer in a group members or friends hold you more accountable, and you have backup and support from your group members. Also, our experiment showed that people are more likely to respond if the thief is casually dressed or in a way that is societally characterized as low class, therefore showing the prejudice people have against lower class, this being that they are more likely to be criminals.